Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 19 of Just One More Podcast. I am Jeff from Just One More Level, and we have John from mybrainongames.com. How are you doing, John?
I am here once again.
That's 19 episodes in. That's we're going strong.
I've set the record for most consecutive appearance on this podcast. Of course, it's a tie. I'm share the spotlight with someone else.
Yeah, that's gotta share that ongoing record, the streak. It is November 20th, 2022. I'm for the most part, for anybody out there that is listening, I'm gonna be just as surprised as others if this happens to go, close to an hour, because
just do it, Jeff. Just ask me the burning question.
So I know that I haven't played a whole lot of Star Ocean over the last week, but what about you?
I played 1 hour.
That's for the most part, like last week was a little far as my work schedule goes, it was a little over the place, but
yeah. And I was going to say, I think in fairness too, like the previous week's worth of gameplay, it seemed like you put a lot of time in because you basically caught up to where I was.
Yeah. So there is some stuff from the previous episode that we will potentially get into. I don't know how far you got in that hour.
Yeah. So we can just jump right into it. In that hour, I reached Baldar. I got into Baldar, and I basically explored all of Baldar, but have not progressed the story.
So, in the last episode, there was a little bit of confusion about the Osarian high roads and the Osarian plains.
Yes, yeah.
Both
a little
areas,
bit of confusion, I think, on your part.
So
and in fairness to that, I had not seen the other place yet.
So we talked a little bit about how the naming conventions so far not exactly the greatest.
The only thing I'd say is having been to the Osarian plains, the Osarian high road is the way you get into Asarius, and then the way you depart Asarius to go to Baldar is the Osarian plains. And my kind of nitpicky gripe is just that, well, it's called the Osarian plains, but it's got a lot of rolling hills. It kind of matches the Osarian high road, and that's a good thing because it's up there for being my favorite environment in the game so far. Yeah. But as we're about to talk about, I'm sure is the performance is just terrible.
Yeah, god awful. And that was one thing that when we were talking in the last episode, there's, as far as performance goes, in the high road or Osarian high road, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. And I remember you saying that. Well, I don't think it is quite 5 to 10 frames a second bad.
Yeah, I was kind of confused because I was trying to recall while we were talking about it. I was like, yeah, whenever I'd come up on those, large groups of those thieving enemies, those I think scumbags, what they're called, okay, yeah,
scumbags.
It would take a hit then, but for the most part it was good. But yeah, in the Osarian plains, it's always just almost sub 30. God.
If turning the camera makes the game freak out, if you're flying around the place,
the flying platforming sucked.
Yeah. And so for the most part, both the high roads and the plains, not good, but the plains are just atrocious as far as performance goes. When fighting enemies on the plains, I would have enemies just disappear and then reappear because you're still dealing with sizable groups of enemies.
Yeah, and I'm guessing the performance is that way just because there are so many large groups of those scumbag enemies. Like, I mean, to their credit, this was like the first time where it felt like, okay, this is a large area, and there are kind of a lot of enemies in it. It doesn't feel like I'm crossing this, like, it takes me like 10 minutes to get from one end of this area to the other, and I encountered like 3 groups of enemies. Like in this one, it seemed like pretty much like about every minute of traversal is like, okay, there's another group of enemies I can fight.
Yeah, and also in the plains, there are a few. Usually when you're fighting enemies and stuff, they're on the same like level as you are. There's some groups in the plains that you've got enemies that are kind of up in towers shooting at you. So very small amounts of, very minute amount of differences there. Kind of a slight variety in the combat. Not much, but it's there. But yeah, like that's while doing anything in the plains. I remember referencing or mentioning in the last episode that like I couldn't quite remember when the last time I saved was, and like I was getting to the point that like sometimes the game would just freeze. Like I would go to the menu and it would freeze. I would go over to where I could save and it would freeze before I could save. And I'm like, please, just make sure you save, because I don't want to go through this tediousness of like the last hour or two of getting to this point again. Like I just do not want to have to do that. But luckily it saved, no issue as far as saving. But
and just a correction, Chad is correcting me. I was calling the capital Asarius. It looks like it's called Ascendros. So thanks to the chat.
Okay, yeah. So Ascendros, which is the capital, is huge. Like it is such a massive area. But obviously there's not a lot of moving things in there, and you're not fighting anything, so the game doesn't really have issues. It doesn't have any performance issues in the capital.
Runs perfectly in the capital. It's just like you said, there's not much to do there. Yeah. Not many people to talk to.
I will say that after, since for the most part, like story wise, I had caught up to you and kind of gotten a little bit beyond where you were at from the like episode 17.
Yeah, because you had caught up, and I had not left Ascendros at that point, but you had already been to Baldar and back. And like I said, I'm basically, I got to Baldar, explored it all, and now I'm just, the next thing for me to do when I play it is to basically progress the story.
So kind of from what I did play over the last week with Star Ocean.
Out of curiosity, just how much time did you get put into it?
It was probably about kind of same around with you, about an hour, maybe hour and a half.
Okay, so you didn't. Your lead is not insurmountable for me to catch back up to you then.
Yeah. So for the most part, like I've essentially, as far as like the story goes for me, like I've done everything in Baldar, and I'm back at the capital. So the events that happen in Baldar, and then you traverse back to the capital, that's where I'm at. So essentially what I did play was, I was like, you know what, since there's a little bit of a gap now in the story, I'll try to focus in on the side quests, write down and map out what Istoa players I have left to play that's available to me that I haven't at least beat once. So that's kind of what I was doing. I did find, now granted, I don't know how secure this is, but essentially with Istoa, there's at least, it seems like once you beat someone the first time, you don't get a piece the second time you beat them.
That's what I was expecting, had not tried it.
So I made it an effort to kind of keep track of that, because like I was taking on people that I thought that I had beaten before, and I got a piece, and I was like, you know what, just to make sure, I played them again, and I didn't get anything after beating them one time. So it looks like for the most part, as far as what I can tell, it's a one and done reward process for beating Istoa players in the game.
Makes sense.
So then, while doing that, I did try to clean up some of the side quests that I could go into. and you and I have kind of been
You still
stuck.
haven't found the worms, have you?
I have not, and I do not understand. And there is a second side quest that I have picked up at some point that has the exact same wording. It's just a different person in a different town with a different set of worms that apparently attacks them after they eat a meal. So I've tried.
Oh.
I went into the inn.
I think you may have just answered it.
Well, I thought so too. So I went to the inn. I had every meal that the inn provided. Went out into the Lacerius, or the
Larkus Weld?
Larkus
region, I think.
Yeah, the Larkus region. I went over that entire area. I even skipped over fights because I was like, I don't want the food buff thing to wear out just in case that's somehow tied to the side quest. Nothing.
Now,
not a thing.
Let me ask you this. I don't think there is. I think we've encountered them once or twice. Is there a fire where you guys can rest overnight?
I don't.
Because what would you do if you're resting? You'd maybe eat some grub, go to sleep.
Yeah. I don't.
And that's the thing. I don't think there is in the Larkus region. I know we've come across them like 2 or 3 times.
I think there's a resting spot in the Weld, but I don't remember one being in region.
It may be worth trying in the Larkus Weld just to see if maybe like the description of that quest was wrong.
Yeah.
And of course, at some point, if we never find it, we'll just like look online and say, okay, what was the answer?
Who has figured this out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sure somebody has. We just have not looked, which is fine. Trying to like have a virgin playthrough of sorts.
So that's essentially what I did was just went through, cleaned up a few of the side quests. I unlocked, I think, two or three additional like item creation options.
Yep. You up to like 3 now, 4 maybe.
I think so. So I've got compounding. I've got. I can't remember. Smithery, I think is what it's called. So like smithing, and then I think something dealing with clothing. I'm not sure, but anyway.
Yeah. Did you play anything else? I guess last week, or was it just mainly that and not a lot of time for it?
Outside of that, I did put a little bit more time into Vampire Survivors. Just getting
nice.
a little bit further in there. Got the 3rd area unlocked.
Did you get the map?
I got the map, and
how about that map?
It is nice.
That's very helpful.
So yeah, got the map, and then there was something else that was in the 3rd world that I also picked up. The Ars something. It's a book. So yeah, I got the map and then got the book, and got access to more characters. I did try out the one that has like lightning strikes, or the like lightning ring that's just kind of built into the character. And yeah, just kind of traverse through. There's one that throws little, it looks like bouncing balls or whatever. He's useless. I tried him. I was like, oh, he comes with like 2 or 3 projectiles to start off with. Awesome. Yeah, cool. And then, yeah, that's not as useful as I thought it was going to be. At least for that area. Maybe in a different stage. I can't remember the name of the character, but yeah, so
I'm going to be very interested. I got a couple more runs of that in last week, but be very interested to basically max out all the stats, all the stats that carry into whichever character you play as, and then go back and kind of like do cleanup. Basically, okay, let me go beat the forest as this character and basically just be OP.
Yeah. But with... for the most part, this is still kind of part of the Star Ocean saga. We just kind of put Star Ocean on the side for a little bit.
Star Ocean ground to a halt in this week. Now, for my part of the reason was
to hear Uh, I'm pretty sure. Well, we're transitioning into it now, so I'm curious as to hear what you have to say next. So yeah.
That's what you think, but I'm going to usurp your assumption,
Oh.
because most of the time I spent last week, and I did play a lot of what we'll get into after that.
Oh.
But
Okay.
I did spend a lot of time last week playing Ys, just trying to get that cleaned up.
Oh
So update on that, yeah, because I thought, okay, Pokemon's coming out on Friday. I'm already playing Pokemon Star Ocean, and now I threw Vampire Survivors into the mix. So let me get Ys done because I'm near the end there. I am still not done with it.
What?
I am so I'm right at the end. I basically just held off. I think I probably put like 8 to 10 hours into it this last week.
And you still didn't beat it.
Yeah, and I could have beat it. I was just grinding out some of those trophies where it's like, okay, I am close enough to getting this one. I'm close enough to like getting 1 million of the currency. Let me go and do that. So I mean, I'm literally right at the end. Like the next session, I could just beat it, but there's still one or two more of the trophies I'm going to shoot for before I do that. I did get 100% map completion, which was really cool to work on. Just as I was playing the game. Just always thinking, okay, I need to like go up against all the walls, kind of got to chart this uncharted forest and shoot for that because I knew that was a trophy. It was really fun while playing the game. It was not so much fun when I had 0.2% left, and I basically had to retrack the entire forest to find where that 0.2% was.
God, I the only game that comes to memory having a similar situation was Star Ocean Till the End of Time. There was
Speaking of Star Ocean,
yeah, there was an in-game trophy that brought about a special like in-game item that if you completely mapped out every area, a trophy would pop, and then you could go turn in that trophy for a special item. But yeah, getting down to like the single digits, and it's just like, where have I not been yet?
Yeah, so thankfully I only went through like a quarter of the forest or half the forest before I found like the portion that I was missing. So that was kind of a relief because at some point after doing that for like 10 minutes, it was almost just like, do I even care?
Yeah, I mean...
But I did. I cared.
Obviously, because you got it.
Yeah, and so some of the other stuff I've been doing was, again, just like trying to max out my gold, or not max it out, but get across the 1 million currency threshold. And I was sitting at like 750,000, so I still had a pretty good chunk to go. But at the same time, I was also maxing out all of the characters' skills. And I had said in a previous episode where this game is just like a blast. At some point, like you can just spec your character with their accessories to where your skills don't cost a lot of like MP or whatever that currency is. You know, the magic meter to use those. And then if you kill enemies with a skill, it just replenishes your meter even more. So at some point, you can spec your character where you're just doing nothing but skills. So basically working like 2 birds, 1 stone, trying to get the money while also maxing out all the skills. Like it was just a very enjoyable grinding experience where like evocative of Pokemon for me, where it's like, okay, I can almost do this in my sleep. So I'm just like going through the motions, grinding out these levels, and then kind of focus on another thing. So I've got 2 more characters that I've got to max out their skills, which won't take that long, like maybe an hour. And then at that point, I think I'm ready to just go ahead and beat the game and actually be able to put it down, and then be able to focus on Star Ocean, Vampire Survivors, and now Pokemon.
Yeah, because, well, before getting into Pokemon, I can't remember. Did you say that the like big bad or like the boss of Celceta, the boss was like the creator of like ideas or something, or was that just a random boss?
No, so that does lead into the final boss.
Okay.
Which again, I would say, you know, at some like put this game on your to-do list because it is really good. Like I really enjoyed it. But part of the reason I enjoyed it so much is, as we were talking like last weekend, I think off podcast, was just the fact that they took such a cliche setup, like the main character has amnesia, but then actually spun a story in such an interesting way where it was like, oh, this has actually got my interest. Like, okay, what is going on? Because, yeah, at some point you encounter this guy who's a god, and he's basically says, oh, yeah, like the ideas for everything, like the ideas that people have, like their epiphanies and their creations. Like, oh, I just invented something. That all comes from me. Well, and then it even unravels even further as you get closer to the end, where it just, again, kind of puts everything on pause, and it's just like, okay, what is going on? I'm intrigued to see how this closes. And so, yeah, it does continue going down that route.
So I will definitely have to put that on my radar. Because, yeah, like Ys has always been one of those franchises that I look at and it's like, this is it seems like a classic kind of just JRPG experience, and I just really haven't played. Like, I see the games, I'm like, I want to play that, and then I just, for whatever reason, I don't.
Yeah, just time. You gotta have time, and you gotta prioritize.
Which
other games got your priorities.
Speaking of time and games having our attention and priorities, how much time and attention have you put into the latest generation of Pokemon?
So I am probably like 5 or 6 hours in now. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Like, we got the double pack.
Friday.
Yeah, it came out on Friday. Got the double pack. Yeah, so I mean, it's Sunday. I put in a couple hours each day on average, basically, and really, I just want to go play more of it too. Like, after we get done here, it's like, okay, well, let's see, what do I got to do to get ready for bed for the work week? I got to shower, and at that point, I think that'll probably be my only obligation. It's like, okay, maybe I'll play a little more Pokemon before going to bed.
Because I remember, there was, Star Ocean, the Divine Force. We're still playing it, but I think we both have kind of gotten to the point with the game where we like it for what it is. It has its flaws. It's not a polished game. It has issues, especially with the recent areas that we've gone through where performance struggles. But like I remember you saying that I really just kind of want to play Ys, and for me, like I put Yakuza Like a Dragon kind of on the side burner because it's like, well, we're gonna play Star Ocean, and now I'm like, I really kind of just want to go back to playing Yakuza, or just the mind numbingness of Vampire Survivors. For you, I mean, a brand new world of Pokemon is now in front of you, so
yeah, quite enticing. And then speaking of games that don't perform well, man,
so
must be like my Achilles heel. Like, oh, Star Ocean, can't wait to play that big open world game, big open world RPG that doesn't perform well. Oh,
so
hey, what about Pokemon? Hey, big open world RPG that doesn't perform well.
And I'm now for just from my personal standpoint, like my excitement for Pokemon, my whatever for Pokemon has waned over the last couple of years. I enjoyed Pokemon Legends Arceus. I thought that was a great departure from the usual formula of Pokemon. But my biggest gripe with like the core main titles is that like they introduce like one or two gimmicks, but typically the formula largely stays the same from game to game. I know with Sword and Shield they really shook things up quite a bit as far as like the way that they handle like the Elite Four. Like, there's not really an Elite Four.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, if that's the case, you may like this may be your favorite Pokemon game then, because they've basically thrown a lot of the staid linear format of the games out the window.
Of course,
I think I'm like 4 hours in, and I've got to the point where basically, okay, you're a student at this big school. You go to the school, you talk to some people, and hey, here starts the treasure hunt. What is the treasure hunt? Basically, just go out and explore and figure out what your treasure is. Are you a collector? Do you want to be a champion? And so it basically just says, okay, the world is at your command. The world is your oyster. Just go wherever you want.
Or the world is your cloister, if you will.
And actually, they do, like, one of the characters does say that. The world is your oyster.
Well, you got to have puns in there. Like it's a world of Pokemon. The vast majority of the Pokemon have punny names to begin with. But like one thing with the core concept of the Pokemon games is like there is the people who are like, like myself, that are like, well, the games don't really change a whole lot versus previous games. And because of that, like you still get a very well polished experience. So I am kind of surprised at how, like, performance wise, I've been seeing people talk about Scarlet and Violet.
Yeah, you played Arceus though, right?
Yeah, and it had issues. It definitely had issues.
So I guess it surprises me that then you're surprised.
Well, it just because like with Pokemon Legends Arceus, I really, despite what they had showed about Scarlet and Violet, I really didn't think it was going to be that far off of the beaten path. I still thought that it was going to be, how like with X and Y, and they introducing like 3D battles and stuff. Like, I thought that they were going to, kind of dip their toe in that direction, but not go actual open world. And I also kind of thought that, Scarlet and Violet had more development time. So I just kind of thought that with Scarlet and Violet that it would be just a better end product. But
yeah, I mean, the stuff seen online is crazy. A lot of it's just insane. Now, I will say from my perspective, I have not encountered anything crazy like that. The worst stuff I've experienced is basically the almost like frame rate prioritizing, where you'll see like a Pidgey or some sort of bird Pokemon off in the distance, and it's flapping at like 5 frames a second. But then as you get closer, then it actually like, oh, you can see me now. I'm going to speed up because you're within a certain range, which that's the same sort of stuff I experienced with Arceus. And low draw distance. Another culprit, kind of like Arceus. I think in a lot of ways.
Star Ocean.
Yeah, and Star Ocean. Yeah. I would say in the Pokemon games case, I think at this point they're just being hampered by the hardware. I can't speak to I'm not a developer. I don't know Game Freak's expertise or lack thereof, because there's also been stuff I've seen online where we can't say it's. We can't say it's hardware, because then we look at what Monolith Soft is doing with these massive open world and the Xenoblade games, or even what they did on the Wii U with Xenoblade Chronicles X.
Or just what happened with Bayonetta 3. Bayonetta 3, from what people are saying, has done some amazing things with the hardware too.
Yeah.
Or Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, comparing Breath of the Wild, Xenoblade games, kind of like apples to apples. Like, here's this big open world game. How do they compare? But yeah, so I haven't seen any of that. I'd be interested to see, okay, a lot of these issues, are they coming from people who are, running the game pre-patch? Because there was a day one patch that fixed issues. Are they running on an emulator that's not going to have, actual hardware specs to it? No. I don't know. I can just say, well, from my experience and then from seeing my spouse, who's played about the same amount of time, have not seen anything ridiculous like what we're seeing online with the invisible boatmobile, or just crazy animation,
stretched out characters, or
it has been hysterical to watch though.
I have a couple people that I've seen on social media said that they think it's the longer you play, it seems like the worse it gets.
Yes, I have seen that. I want to try that, because that's how I've played Sword and Shield generally. Is basically just never closing the game. So if that truly is the case, I will probably start seeing some of that stuff soon.
Because some people are saying that it's a memory issue. It's the bigger the file gets, the harder the game, or the worse the game performs. But
just memory leaks throughout the place. So I mean, I'll be interested to see next generation of hardware, what Game Freak can put out. And if it, basically what's hampering them. Is it totally decision based? Is it hardware based? Is it lack of expertise? Because this stuff even came up whenever Sword and Shield, before they even came out, with hey, how come not all Pokemon are in here? And it's very easy to lay blame at, well, it's going to take a lot of work to animate 700, 800, 900 Pokemon. And I mean, it's the case with Scarlet and Violet where, they don't have a full national dex either. It's still limited to, like, I don't know what the number is, but probably like 600 to 700, 800 Pokemon in them.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of poor technical performance from it. I have not encountered anything personally. And of course, take it with a grain of salt. I put like 700, 800 hours, 700 something hours into Sword and Shield. Yeah. So of course, I like Pokemon games, but so far this one, 5 hours or so in, it's like having kind of the Arceus style open world. I think it's more open world than Arceus, because Arceus wasn't truly an open world. But having what it seems to be in this game so far is just like, okay, I want to get out of this town. I want to quit progressing the story just so I can go explore Pokemon. Just so I can go explore the area. I'm going to catch this Pokemon. I'm going to fight this Pokemon. And part of it for me too may just be because I've I guess they have not shown a lot of their new Pokemon. Like Game Freak Nintendo in their pre-release buzz for it, they did releases of, well, hey, here's what this new Pokemon is. Here's what this new Pokemon is. But I think there's like 100 new Pokemon, and they showed off like 10 or a dozen of them or so. So a lot of the time, and I have not spoiled anything for myself. I've not like gone to Sarah being just like, okay, let me run down the list. Everything is fresh for me. So even like the evolutions of the starters, like, oh, what do they evolve into? I hope Fuecoco gets a good evolution. And so just running around the world and seeing something new, be like, oh, what is that? What type is that? Cool.
Yeah, that's I think because I did get Sword, and I played through it a good amount. Like, it was a nice departure. Like, it had some good changes to it. I didn't quite get into the max raid battles, but it was a cool thing to kind of provide something new to the Pokemon franchise. And the fact that, there was this just massive area. It wasn't just like the Safari Zone. It was like you could actually go to this big area and just traverse around, get on your bicycle and ride around, and just depending on the weather and the time and just what type of like season was going on, like you'd see different Pokemon or different reactions or whatever, or not reactions, but like traits and personalities. But the last Pokemon game that I really sunk a lot of time into and kind of like played it over and over again was X and Y, like that generation. But for the most part, like it's I don't know, just for some reason, like with Legends Arceus, I had all of this just interest for it because it was so different. But now with like Scarlet and Violet, I just really didn't have, I just don't have any interest in it. And I don't know if I don't really know why. But for the most part, like one thing that I enjoyed with the Pokemon, to not have it spoiled, kind of like what you were saying, is like seeing a Pokemon evolve for the first time and like seeing what like Fennekin evolved into, or way back with Gold and Silver, just seeing what Cyndaquil evolves into. Just kind of that first time experience of like, oh, that's so cool to look at. Like, that's just awesome.
Mm-hmm. Just like the build up to the mystery, and that's helped my experience this time. Like whenever I always think back to like when Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee came out a couple years ago. They're just remakes of the first generation. I had pre-ordered them just because like, hey, new Pokemon, and it'll be interesting to see these because they're kind of blending the Pokemon Go styled gameplay with a mainline entry. So it's like, okay, well, I'm interested in playing them, but never really got hyped or had any real interest for it until the day it came out, whenever I was sitting at work realizing like, oh, wait, it's Friday.
It's Pokemon Day.
A new Pokemon game is coming out. I'm going to be able to play a new Pokemon game all weekend. Yeah. And so that's kind of been that for me, especially just seeing like new Pokemon and just not like basically going in blind and being like, oh, that's cool. And then there's a number of them where it's like, I love bug Pokemon. So seeing like the first
really?
bug Pokemon, it was kind of like a letdown. Like, oh, that's a cool premise. I like it, but not too into it. Hopefully it evolves into something cool. Maybe it'll redeem itself.
It's not a Weedle, a little caterpillar with a horn on it.
I was more of a Caterpie man myself.
I mean, like,
I'll give you
Butterfree is cool.
Yes. And as I've grown older, I've reverted to where I probably still like Caterpie more, but Beedrill all the way.
Yeah, like, just as far as like the early couple of generations, like Beedrill just looks just menacing. Just like it fits this whole thing of like it will mess you up. It is going to stab you over and over and over until you stop moving. Whereas with like Butterfree, it's gonna flap its wings and put you to sleep.
I don't know. Butterfree could be pretty menacing. I mean, there's that one level when Butterfree levels up and it gets a chance to learn Stun Spore, Poison Powder, Sleep Powder. Yeah. Butterfree's gonna mess you up, just in like an indirect way.
I mean, a lot of it. I mean, I guess with like Poison Powder, you can eventually kill or faint the opposing Pokemon, whereas with Beedrill, it's just much more upfront. Like, I'm gonna stab you, like. I'm not going to put you to sleep. I'm not going to stun you or anything like that. No, I'm not going to watch you slowly die with poison. I'm going to take these giant horn needle type things, and I'm just going to stab you till you stop moving. Yeah. So that's just
So one thing from Arceus that I do miss is just being able to throw a Pokeball while out in the wild and catch a Pokemon without even having to battle it or anything. Yeah. You still have the ability to just like walk around and throw a Pokeball at the wild Pokemon, the roaming Pokemon, but it just starts the battle with them. And sometimes if you sneak up on them, you basically get a free turn. So I mean, there is benefit to doing it, but it was just so nice in Arceus just be able, hey, that's a weak Pokemon. I just need to catch it, and I'm still too early to tell, but another thing I really liked about Arceus, if I'm remembering this correctly, was it incentivized you to catch a lot of the same Pokemon. Yeah. And I think that was for like, I forget exactly what it was. Arceus is one game where I beat, and I really, really want to go back to and just have not had the time to, have not prioritized it.
Well, if I remember correctly, I think it was I think with Arceus, it was similar to the Let's Go games, where at least with the Let's Go games, like if you kept a streak going, like didn't that like increase your chances of like finding shinies or like maybe giving you like an experience multiplier or something?
That concept is present even in the base games of having those streaks going to improve your shiny odds. But in Pokemon Go, that is another good instance where they incentivize just catching any Pokemon you come across. It's like at some point, in older games, you'd look at it and say, well, I have a Sandshrew. In fact, I have two. I've got one for a Sandshrew. I've got one to evolve into a Sandslash. I don't need any more. But newer games have, I felt, done a good job of incentivizing you to, hey, just keep catching Pokemon. There's more payoff besides just completing your Pokedex or trying to find one that's good for breeding and good for like getting like a competitive leveled Pokemon or something. In this game, I have not delved into it too much, but whenever you catch Pokemon, you're also getting some of their materials, kind of the same way as in Pokemon Go, you'd get their candy. Now in Pokemon Go, you get their candy, and that's what you use to power up your Pokemon or evolve them. Here, it looks like you use those materials to craft TMs.
So I know you're only like, you said about 5 hours into it, but for the most part, I haven't really paid too much attention to Scarlet and Violet. But did they add a new evolution? Like, did they add any new like evolutions to this game that you know of?
I'm gonna say no. I don't know for sure, but I'm sure if there was a new evolution, we'd see it all over Twitter.
Oh well, yeah, I guess true. But yeah, like. I know you and we've talked about it before. Like, there's still plenty of types out there that they could do an evolution of. So, hopefully, maybe there's some surprises or something. But I would love to see a dragon type evolution.
Well, yeah. Be careful what you say, because with this game, kind of like the new gimmick for this generation, this entry is Terra types terastallizing. I don't know if you've seen it in any of the coverage or anything on Twitter, but
Terastallizing?
yes. So each Pokemon has a Terra-type in this game. It's something exclusive. It's something that only happens in the Paldea region. Kind of how like Gigantamax and Max Raid battles. That's only something that happened in Galar. It's like some natural phenomenon.
Mega evolutions only happen in wherever X and Y took place.
Which that's not true technically, because in the remakes of X and Y they also had Mega Evolutions. That was not a regional thing.
They did remakes of X and Y already?
Or excuse me, not X and Y, but Ruby and Sapphire.
Oh wait.
Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire.
Well, wasn't that like primal forms or something?
There were primal forms in addition to the Mega Evolutions. I think Mega Evolutions were just items.
Okay.
So that's not a regional thing.
Okay. So I mean,
but the Terra types here, it looks like a lot of them will take the form of like the Max Raid battles from Sword and Shield, where you and 3 other people, you can connect online and battle with those folks if you want to. All go up against this one Pokemon. And whenever you defeat it, you get a chance to catch it, if you can defeat it. But in this game, it's terastallizing. They're Terra types. Basically, they have like this crystalline form, and that crystalline form adds another ability. So, you could have any of the other like 18 abilities to any Pokemon that is in this game. So you could have a Dragon-type Eevee. Now, it's not your Dragon Eeveelution, but it is a Dragon-type Eevee. Or you could have an Espeon that is a Psychic Dragon.
I mean, that would be really cool. That would be really cool.
So, it's the gimmicks are kind of gimmicks. It is what it is. It's like, okay, this is going to be around for this generation. It's kind of like, here's the new thing for competitive battles and something interesting to kind of keep the core gameplay interesting. Because again, like you were saying, it's Pokemon. Kind of that core formula has remained the same for 20, 25 years. So they got to do what they got to do to keep it fresh. But this one is pretty interesting. It could be, for competitive battles, it could put a whole new spin on things just because, like, okay, well, I can add any type to this Pokemon. So that's just going to expand the potential combinations of party teams and what you got to be on the lookout for.
I guess one thing that I am kind of curious about, for the most part, like, I don't know, I don't remember the first handful of generations, and I don't really know when they started kind of doing some of the stuff, but I don't remember in like the first 2 or maybe 3 generations, but like some Pokemon having like, very, not too nuanced, but like with Inkay or Inkay, like having to turn the system upside down to evolve that Pokemon.
Like unique evolutions, like one-off evolutions.
Yeah, like I'm curious. If there is one thing that I'm curious about with Scarlet and Violet, is what Game Freak came up with, for this round of like new Pokemon, because for like a weird kind of like a nuanced approach to evolve a Pokemon, because I think in Sword and Shield wasn't there like the
thinking of Milcery.
I think so.
Milcery that evolves into Alchemy, where
you have to like go in a circle or something, or like you have to. Okay.
Yes. So that was the one that came to my mind as well, and I think there was a kind of a lot or a good number, like a dozen or so in Sword and Shield.
The apple dragon thing.
I remember having to do those to try and complete the Pokedex and then get the shiny charm and do all this other stuff, kind of like the post-game stuff, and having a lot of fun, be like, oh, how do I evolve this? What do I got to do to get that? And yeah, with Milcery and Alchemy, it's like, okay, Milcery, you go buy a berry, or you go buy this like berry spread or whatnot from like a cafe. You have Milcery hold it, and then depending, I think, on like the time of day and how many times you spin to the left or spin to the right, like there's this. If you go on Cerebi, there's a big chart with like all like the 40 different potential outcomes and how you get them. So that was pretty fun. And then like you're talking about with Inkay, where you actually have to hold the system upside down. And I guess it's not totally new either, because even with like the Hitmon family, like getting Hitmon like Tyrogue. Tyrogue could evolve into any of them depending on if attack is more than defense, attack is less than defense, or attack is the same as defense.
Yeah. So yeah, like I'm curious. Like I said, if there's anything that I really am curious about, It's going to be like, what is that unique Pokemon that has a specific way that it needs to, like, what requirements you have to hit for
Like
for
what
that
sort of
evolution to happen.
non-traditional evolutions are there?
Because we've had a couple. Well, with Sword and Shield, this is the second quote unquote new generation of Pokemon on the same hardware. So with this being the second one, with Sword and Shield coming out in 2017, 2018.
I'm not sure.
With that
2019
game,
maybe.
possibly. People keep saying that the core Pokemon games are on like a 3-year cycle. So it could be 2019. I've never really noticed Pokemon being on a 3-year cycle, but I guess maybe.
Yeah, chat is saying 2019.
No, okay. Well, so we can always rely on the chat. But yeah, just kind of looking at that. There's, like I said, I was surprised at some of the performance issues, because I felt like Scarlet and Violet it had more development time than Pokemon Legends Arceus.
I mean, Game Freak developed Arceus. Did Arceus come out top of this year?
Yeah, it was January.
Yeah. So I mean,
yeah,
if you look at it compared to like Sword and Shield, like, okay, if it's the same team within Game Freak working on that, then yeah, they had a couple of years, which is probably, like you're pointing out, like the same amount of time between any installment. But I'm not surprised. Like, even in the lead up, and think of like going on walks and talking to someone, just being like, I can't wait for the next generation of Nintendo hardware just to see how powerful it is, and if people can take advantage of it. I'm not surprised the Pokemon game performs this way, but it's still disappointing.
And of course, it has once again brought up the conversation piece of what Nintendo's next hardware, like what they're going to do with it, when is it going to launch, how powerful will it be? Because I mean, the Switch didn't launch as a powerful piece of tech when it came out in 2017.
Yeah, I mean, it was already like a couple-year-old technology at that time.
Yeah, and just with everything going on, like, we are still technically dealing with a pandemic. Like, just because people aren't really talking about it, just because people are trying to sweep it under the rug, like, there is still a massive problem. I'm sure Nintendo is not rushing to try to get a system together with harder parts to get a hold of, to be kind of in the same or similar boat that Sony and Microsoft are in.
Yeah, and I mean, especially at this point where, looking forward, they've got a massive install base. I think this was the most pre-ordered Pokemon game. It's gonna sell like gangbusters regardless. Yeah. And then they've also got Breath of the Wild 2 on the horizon, which could be the swan song for the platform, but they've still got, I don't know what the sales are like, but I'm sure the sales have not like just dropped off a cliff or anything for the Switch. I'm sure they're still pretty good.
Yeah, I think they are within striking distance of surpassing PS4's lifetime total. I think they're just a couple million away from that, which after this holiday season is over, the Switch will most likely have done it.
I remember like the Wii, where the Wii was just selling like hotcakes for a couple of years, and all of a sudden it just dropped off the cliff. Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen with the Switch.
And I think Nintendo, and pretty much any company now, like instances of like what happened with the Wii, I don't see that happening ever again. I think Nintendo has learned a lot from the Wii and the Wii U on how to avoid instances
bow
where
out gracefully of a generation.
Yeah, because like with the Wii, it really, support really did just stop. Like there wasn't. It was almost like they were trying. They pretty much had a game plan for about 4 or 5 years with the system, and Sony and Microsoft were like, well, we're still trying to recoup the costs on our stuff, So we're not really, rushing for the next piece of hardware because the PS3 and the 360 were on the market for a very long time before their successors came out. And it was just kind of like that weird time frame where Nintendo, you could tell that they were gearing up for another piece of hardware, and they tried to stretch the Wii out just a little bit longer, but like content really did just dry up for the Wii, which in turn caused the Wii sales to just plummet, which then got the Wii U off to a bad start amongst other things, of people confusing it as a $300 controller for the Wii. But I think I do not think, well, for the most part, I do not see any of the major companies running into that same issue. I think all of the Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony, they have enough development power under their umbrellas now that they can pretty confidently map out like game releases, services, whatever, to get a system through to the end. And like with the Switch, like they just released Scarlet and Violet. They had Bayonetta 3 come out. They had Xenoblade Chronicles 3. There was Pokemon Legends Arceus in the beginning of the year. They have Breath of the Wild 2 coming out next year. Like
I got Fire Emblem coming out in January.
Yeah, so like Nintendo is not needing to rush to another piece of hardware.
Yeah,
although it would be nice to see what they're coming up with next, because they're usually very creative with their hardware.
Yeah, and I don't think the next hardware will be creative. I think it'll basically just be an extension of the Switch. I think it's got to have backwards compatibility considering how successful the Switch was. And I think that handheld home console fusion is just a great idea. I can't see them going away from that with the next one. But yeah, like from a tech standpoint, even though the Switch is so old and we do see games that struggle with it, there are still those that come out and, are like well attuned to it. Like I have not played Xenoblade 3 personally. I've not seen any sort of uproar about it though at the same time.
Yeah,
I've not
heard
seen
good things about it.
Yeah, I've not seen like these massive open worlds that the Xenoblade games tend to have, and people saying like the frame rate's down to like 10 frames a second. Like what's going on? So, and especially for smaller games or indie games, there's still the potential to have success on the Switch whenever you like make a game knowing the constraints, like build within those constraints.
Well, and it's like this kind of like Renaissance-esque type thing with Square Enix. They've done some amazing things with the Switch, with like Octopath Traveler. They've got Dragon Quest 3 remake on the horizon. Triangle Strategy, like
Harvestella, the Diofield Chronicles came to it. There's a number of other like Square Enix games that appeared across like the Switch and the PlayStation and Xbox families.
And they handled, like performance-wise, they handle very well. Which kind of, I guess, is just a little surprising thing with Star Ocean. Like Star Ocean didn't even have to develop with the Switch in mind, and yet we've got these areas that are just choppy as hell.
Yeah, that's one thing. It's like, okay, yeah, the Switch, there are Switch games that look, and that's another thing, or Scarlet and Violet, it's got stylized visuals. I'm fine with the visuals, but then whenever you see it in conjunction with like people's frame rate dropping or just like the low textures and bad draw distance, like, okay, this is awful. But at the same time, like you said, well, just because it's not on the Switch, it's on more powerful hardware. We're playing on the Series X, and there's a potential to be playing it on the PS5, and the fact that you're still having these sorts of issues, like, okay, it's not necessarily the hardware, I guess. There's blame. There's blame at the developers. There's probably blame to go all around. There's all sorts of stuff, and maybe the developers didn't have the time they needed, their budget.
And I mean, it's Final Fantasy kind of went through a similar thing where you've got a lot of people kind of working on multiple projects at the same time. It kind of sounds like that's what Game Freak has recently been running into. Is it's like, okay, well, we got this game to do, we got this game to do, we need to do this, we need to do that. Like, at some point you start running into just employees being tired or burned out or exhausted, and no amount of budget is necessarily going to fix that. No amount of like hardware specs are going to solve that problem either. So there's like you said, there's plenty of like finger pointing that can go on to be like, well, this is why this isn't doing so well.
Regardless,
but,
I've had a
good time with it so far.
Yeah, have not encountered these major issues other people are having. Not to say I won't have them come. I'm excited for them to come. Kind of like that one graphic clicks I showed you in Star Ocean. It's like, oh, that's fun.
Yeah, as long as it's not game breaking, it can be enjoyable.
Yeah, if it's not going to like corrupt my save or anything, I'm cool with it. But yeah, can't wait to, great game still. Can't wait to play it and just be out in the Pokemon world and run amongst all these little critters.
I mean, it's not a Cyberpunk 2077 launch. Like that's what for the most part. Like when Cyberpunk released, it was not even in a complete state at that point. So I don't think people are going to run into that kind of problem with Scarlet and Violet.
Yeah, they're not going to delist it from the eShop.
Yeah. Although people are requesting refunds from what I last saw, but I think that's a little extreme to be like, oh, I want my money back. Like the game is getting reviews in like the upper 70s on like Metacritic and OpenCritic. Like,
yeah, it's scoring right along with a normal Pokemon game.
Yeah, so people freaking out and being like, oh, this is the worst Pokemon game ever. Like, that's a little much.
Yeah, and I mean, social media can get that stuff. Like one bad, it's the blessing of social media. One bad instance can get out in front of millions of people and blow it up. Of course, like you said, that it can be the curse too, because if there's something, we don't have all the facts on, well, then that gets blown out, and now we've got this misinformation out there. So.
Yeah, and people taking like the animations of God of War Ragnarok, and some of the animations, people are like, this is the same animation that they had from the game that came out in 2018. What did they do? Just charge $70 for DLC? Like, no.
And I think even in that case, it's like, we already did that. Why do you want us to do all the same work twice?
I mean, to be fair, the only complaint that I remember people saying about God of War 2018 was that there wasn't enough boss variety. Well, they solved that. They gave you the same, well, not the same game, but they took the game and they're like, okay, we'll give you plenty of boss variety. And people are finding other things to complain about. So
yeah.
But ultimately, as far as the week ahead, I know you said that after we're done with this, you're wanting to dive back into Pokemon.
I kind of feel an obligation to play a little bit of Star Ocean, and not an obligation to. Like, I want to play it. It's just been, I've kind of been focusing my priorities on, let me get Ys done, and then at that point, it's like, oh, well, Pokemon came out. Now I got to play some of that at least to check it out.
I mean, you decided to cram 3 RPGs so close together, so you reap what you sow.
Yeah, and I think even whenever I started Ys, my thought process was, well, I have like a couple of unlocked trophies in this from 2016. Like, even if I stop playing it at some point, I'm still going to finish it with maybe more trophies than I had back then and like increase my completion percentage in it.
So, but yeah, that was kind of a segue into the question of like, after we're recording, you're wanting to play Pokemon, and I was wondering just where Star Ocean may fit into your week ahead. For me, I mean, it's kind of weird. Like, Yakuza Like a Dragon was kind of going to be the other game that I kind of bounced between with the Star Ocean, and now it's just so easy to pick up and play Vampire Survivors.
Yeah.
So like I can play like an hour or two of Star Ocean, and then I can just hop right into Vampire Survivors because same system, Game Pass, quick resume, all that stuff. Just so easy to get into Vampire Survivors. So now, if I'm playing Star Ocean and I'm getting a little too tired, but I'm like, I really don't like. It's still early. I don't really want to try to wind down for the day. Then I can just pop in or just hop over to Vampire Survivors.
Yeah, see, that didn't work out for me last, I think, we may have recorded on Monday. I think after we recorded, I was like, well, it's kind of late to start a session of Star Ocean. I won't really be able to make any meaningful progress in like, just half an hour or so. So I'll just do like a run of Vampire Survivors, and then that turned into like a 1 hour playthrough of that. It's like, damn it, I should have just played Star Ocean.
Yeah, that's Vampire Survivors is such a good addicting game.
Yeah, it is. It is I'll just do one more run. Just one more run. Yeah. And then and in my case, it's like, oh, well, I got enough to unlock this perk, this ability or whatnot. Let me do one more run with that and see how it goes.
Or it's like, oh, I unlocked a new character. Oh, and this character has an experience boost. Or, oh, this character just comes with a lightning ring already attached. It's like, oh, well, I guess I could try. I want to see what this character can do, and then before you know it, just time is getting eaten up.
And speaking of time getting eaten up, it looks like we actually did make it an hour.
Yeah, we actually did. We had to, Star Ocean didn't get to pull much of the weight in the Star Ocean playthrough coverage extravaganza, whatever we're calling this saga with Star Ocean. But so you've got Pokemon on the not on the horizon. You've got Pokemon, you've got Star Ocean, you've got Ease, you've got Vampire Survivors. I've got Star Ocean and Vampire Survivors, and maybe Yakuza, but probably not. So
okay,
hopefully on the next episode we'll have story to talk about with Star Ocean. I guess it just kind of depends on how the other games allow us to do that. So
yeah. I mean, I will. I promise right now, I'll at least get through Baldar.
I will make an attempt over the week as well to get more time to push the story forward with Star Ocean as well. But so just stay tuned, everybody. With episode 20 coming up, we'll have more Star Ocean story stuff to talk about, along with Pokemon. So
and Yeez, and I'm sure Vampire Survivors.
Yeah, and then I've been eyeing Pentiment, but I'm gonna hold off.
Yeah, I saw that came out and it looked like it's getting very very well received. So it's like, well, I want to play that too, but I can't start that anytime soon.
Yeah, we have enough. So, I am Jeff from Just One More Level,
and I was John from MyBrennanGames.com,
and we will be back with episode 20 next week. See ya, everybody.
Bye bye.